Welcome to the ACC Panic Room alongside Lauren Brownlow. I'm Joe Ovies. 3 teams in the Elite Eight from the ACC, Lauren. Not bad for a one-bid conference.
Just clear proof that all the rankings all year were complete trash, you know? I mean, just made up stuff. The ACC didn't do anything. I think I read a stat that the ACC has more top 25 wins in the NCAA tournament than they had in non-con play.
That's
I just had to laugh. Had to laugh.
It is.
Again,
look,
I have said it a bunch of times. The ACC's problem, yes, it was in part that these teams got better later in the year, but it was also that everyone face planted in the non-conference.
Yeah.
Almost everyone. So
I mean, well, okay. Let me ask you this: what is a better way? Because
I don't know.
We're always obsessed with whose conference is better, right? Or how do we determine what conference is good, or what's a down year, what's a good year?
It's weird,
ACC,
right? Because remember, they threw out the metric of like how you're doing in your last couple games or whatever, and
the
I
last
think
10 games metric, yeah.
And I get why, right?
Mm-hmm.
A lot of what the NCAA does is geared towards wanting you to challenge yourself and succeed, at least in some part, but to challenge yourself, most importantly, out of conference, right? That's what the NCAA wants you to do. And so they build everything around that in the selection process. They don't want to just reward some team that got hot late in the year. Sure. And then how do you measure that? Like, one team's hot is different than another's in terms of the league they play in and everything else. But at the same time, like, I would rather have a 14-loss team that's playing well at the end of the year than like a 10-loss team that lost 8 of its last. Do you know what I mean? Like, yeah. It's tough. I don't know a great answer for it. I just know that it's like you're stuck in the non-con, and that's what makes it difficult. And that used to be a thing that really only happened in college football, seemingly, but now it's creeping into basketball, and it's probably not the best.
Probably not the best, and I think that's the thing too. But like David Hill, broke it down by conference, and yeah, the ACC's got 3, and look at all these teams with 1, including the mighty SEC. Now, to be fair, I think it's worth pointing out that the ACC has had years where they've been the dominant conference, and then they don't end up getting a bunch of teams in late rounds, or it always comes back to Duke and Carolina, which, again, to be fair, when we talk about the ACC's success in the postseason, who does it usually come back to? It usually comes back to Duke and Carolina, with a Maryland kind of fitting in there back in the day, or the new ACC where Syracuse might go on one of their surprising runs. I'll just say this, and I know it's not the hottest take in the world, but the truth is always somewhere in the middle. Yes. The one thing I will always push back on, though, is when you do get like the Jeff Borzellos of the world, or Jeff Goodmans, guys who should know better, who get a little too caught up in it. And we all get caught. I'm trying to be fair here. Yes. We all get caught up in the jokey jokes, right? We all do, right? But the problem is when you take this to a national level, and you go away from the little inside jokes that we might have in our little local circles. But like when Borzello, who I know, is a cool dude.
Yeah.
When he tweets out one bit ACC and then he tries to like qualify it or whatever, back in January, like, no, you're setting the table for the conversation, which then gets back to your point about like what is it that you measure a conference's success by.
But see, the thing is the conversation is what it is, right? And the conversation does have an impact. But at the same time, the net rankings were what they were, and those weren't driven by a conversation either.
Well,
it's not like Jeff Borzello saying one bid ACC is going to drive the conversation. But you're right.
And that gets to my other thing, the metrics themselves. Right. We've gotten so married to numbers. I was ranting about this on the air the other day. It is impossible to watch 300-plus college basketball teams, okay? So you voted in the AP Top 25 of basketball, right?
Yes.
Because you do football. You still do. Okay. I lost track of where you vote. My bad. How do you do that? Like, seriously, how do you do that?
Really hard.
It's really
honestly
freaking hard.
Really hard because, like, the thing is, too, And in college football, not everybody loses every week either.
Right.
In college basketball, half the teams are losing from week to week. I'm basically, you know how I do it? I go to KenPom and sort by losses.
There you go. So
and
you
then I
sort by
try to
KenPom.
and I compare it against his actual rankings, view the context.
So you compare KenPom. You go to dollar store brand KenPom, Bart Torvik. You go to the net ranking, these are all sorting tools to get a better idea of what these teams are. But how many of these games are you actually watching? I'm not saying this is an indictment to you because I'm in the same boat as you.
No,
because
that's the thing. Yeah.
Like no knock on some ACC matchups on a Wednesday. Like honestly, I'd rather watch Winning Time on HBO than I would like Georgia Tech versus Wake Forest. Like no knock, but no, especially when you get on the national level, you're not watching all these games. So there's no real good way to determine what is a good league or a bad league. And I know people don't like to give Mike Krzyzewski credit, but he was absolutely right on the Friday of the ACC tournament after they beat Miami, where he said, look, we can't apologize for the non-conference slate, but that put in the bad numbers, which then just recycled bad numbers when the ACC was playing itself.
Yeah, I'm with Kay on that.
You got to watch. You got to freaking watch. And this, again, a little bias from us because all I'm watching is ACC basketball. But towards the end of the season, if you watched Miami, if you watched Carolina, what you're seeing right now should not be a surprise. Should not be a surprise if you watched these basketball teams.
The best way I can think of to help change it is just to say, like, you know, he's right to say who you were in November shouldn't determine where you are in March, sort of thing.
Yeah.
But I also I don't think is that it should keep you out. Like I don't think if you have a year like a team like Wake Forest, and I get why, I feel like but if it's close and you've lost a bunch of games, I would like to see teams that played a tough non-con get the edge because they did play a lot of tough games. But if it's not, if it's coming down to teams that are similar and one team didn't have the best non-con but lost like 3 fewer games, 4 or 5, you know, I might tend to just be like, okay, I don't want to keep you out. But yeah, Steve Forbes was right, though. That's the thing. Steve Forbes said they need a voice, a media person, because one thing that the last year has shown us very clearly.
I'm kind of sad that Steve Forbes doesn't think we're doing that.
Well, it's not anybody's style in ACC media, but like
I thought Steve was watching our panic rooms. I'm sad.
Regardless of whether it's like a front-facing person or not, one thing that this last year or so has made clear is that the ACC is lower down the totem pole than I think it would like to be in terms of the national media conversation.
Well, here's the problem with that, and Wes Durham made this point, Wes of the ACC network. The problem with the ACC is that it's so intertwined with big ESPN that it is the national conversation. Because the ACC doesn't need an advocate because it's everywhere on ESPN. You see what I'm saying? And Wes makes a good point about that. But to kind of wrap my point, if you take anything from this part of the conversation, there is no real good way to determine whether or not a conference is good, bad, or indifferent.
Well,
because if the NCAA tournament is a crapshoot, which everybody loves to tell you, well, then what's November and December basketball?
Right, because that's the thing. Like, I agree with you, but at the same time, you don't hear people dunking. You don't hear those same national voices that would say one bid ACC dunking on the Big Ten for its performance the last 2 years. And
that's what happens when you're on the top for so long.
But that's what I'm saying. I mean, they haven't won a title since 2000, and they have gotten one Elite Eight team with 18 teams in the last 2 years. If that were the ACC, people would be dragging them.
Yes. No, I'm with you on that.
And I'm not saying it'd be fair, but that's what would be happening.
Now, about the Final Four potential of Duke and Carolina. We're one step closer to the Duke-Carolina-mageddon in the Final Four, which I think a good chunk of Carolina fans don't want that.
I don't know that either. I got a lot of responses from both sides that were like, please God, no. Yeah.
It's funny, like on the national level, if you have no dog in the fight, you're probably loving this. But if you're a Duke or a Carolina fan, you don't want this. And we've had this conversation so many times.
I'm loving it because it's what's really cool and what makes our job really fun is like watching these two teams kind of like grow up and become these fully formed freaking basketball teams at almost the exact same time. Like Carolina was a little ahead of Duke's start on it, but it's very cool to see. Like you knew this was lurking within them all season long, and they're both putting it together, and it's very exciting. And I would love to see what it looks like when they play each other. And they
Shout out
won.
to Lavelle Moten, Central coach, who's
Yeah.
essentially making a similar point that we were making earlier in the week as it relates to what happened at Cameron Indoor
Yes,
Stadium,
believe big.
where UNC beating Duke at Duke was the best thing to happen to UNC, and Duke gave UNC the belief and Duke the focus. I think you made the point. It wasn't so much focus. It was more along the lines of, well, it can't get any worse than this, so let's just go out there.
It's like if you walk into like your prom and you trip and fall on your face. You
Right.
know, I didn't do that, thankfully, weirdly. But like,
Yeah.
it doesn't get like, you might be mortified, but you got to say to yourself, you know what? It's all uphill from here, though.
Really?
Like,
I mean, how much worse can it get? Actually, it can get worse. You could lose to Carolina in the Final Four, and that
I don't
would
think
be
that's
Kay's
worse.
career. No, I think it's worse.
I don't think
Because
it
it-
is actually.
Because I think actually maybe it's not worse. It's just doubling down on the bad. Because not only did they ruin Mike Krzyzewski's
Yes.
farewell at Cameron Indoor Stadium,
Then you don't even get a chance to avenge.
and then Carolina ended his career, like literally ended his career.
Okay, you're starting to sell me on it.
Okay, like how do you come back from that? I mean, I think Duke might actually have to shut down the basketball program. No knock on John Shire, but that's it. That's it for Duke. That's a wrap.
So
I'm kidding.
we do this every time they get close.
It's not going to happen.
You don't think so?
No, it's not.
Who do you
gonna
think's
happen.
going to ruin it, Bo?
I think Duke's going to ruin it.
Really?
Yeah, I think Duke's
I
going to ruin
actually
it.
kind of feel the opposite.
Well, okay, like let's talk about Duke and Carolina and where they are right now and how shot luck is such a huge factor and how fleeting that can be. Okay, so let's start with Duke, and then we can get to Carolina, and then we can say goodbye because I got to go mulch, because adulting is hard. Let's go back to the Michigan State win. The last 5 minutes, Duke turned it on. They played some of their best basketball, put the hammer down to win that game. And then you go to Texas Tech, a game that we all knew was going to be a problem for Duke, given how Texas Tech plays defense. And there they were in the last 9 minutes of the game, not missing a single shot, okay? I thought the Michigan State thing was a big deal. To go 9 minutes and make every freaking shot, that's against that top defense, and you're supposed to do that again against Arkansas State, which is very similar to Texas Tech in terms of
I think
its
you're
physicality.
thinking of this in the wrong way.
And then we get to Carolina, where Caleb Love, my goodness.
Yeah, but Caleb followed the rule of the Carolina backcourt.
Okay.
Which
Okay.
is what? Do you
Which is
know what it is?
What's the rule of the Carolina?
Carolina wins 0 games this year when one of those two does not play well.
Oh, yeah.
No games.
Yeah.
One of them has to play well. In the beginning of the year, just RJ playing well wasn't enough. Now it is. And now, I mean, look at it. They've alternated.
But you see what I'm saying about about making shots. I mean, we make fun of this all the time, but Sidney Lowe is absolutely right. You got to make shots. And sometimes
But these are good
when you're heaving up
players,
prayers late in the game, come on, they're going in.
Obvious, this is March. Hashtag this is March.
Hashtag this
Besides,
is March, exactly.
Peanuts, like you want to talk about shot luck, and I'm not talking. I mean, look at St. Peter's and where they are.
Yeah.
But would anybody be surprised if St. Peter's wins tomorrow? I wouldn't.
I don't know. Dude, there's bracket luck too. There's bracket luck too, and Carolina got some big bracket luck going up against St. Peter's. I'm just saying.
Oh, you say they got bracket luck?
Bracket luck.
Well, apparently people were saying that last week after they beat Baylor. And they were like, yeah, they've got the easiest road left. It's like, yeah, they just beat the 1 seed.
Makes things easier, right? And it was so easy beating Baylor that the refs had to make it difficult for them.
Look, I'm just saying that St. Peter's is a physical team. They are not afraid. They will make it ugly. But the one thing that I think Carolina has that the teams that St. Peter's knocked off didn't is house money. So that'll make it interesting because Kentucky had a lot of pressure. Purdue had a lot of pressure. I mean, you saw how devastated those guys were. And I'm not saying Carolina wouldn't be sad to lose. I think they would, but I think they all also understand, like, they have already sort of had a positive culmination to their season, no matter what happens to them. So it'll just be interesting to see the house money. They're both playing with house money. St. Peter's and Carolina are both playing with house money, really. I mean, nobody expected them to be here. So who knows? That'll make it a little interesting, though, for sure, because that's the first, like, major conference team St. Peter's will have faced that doesn't have as much pressure on it as the others did.
Do you think it's going to happen?
See, here's the thing.
Are we going to New Orleans? Are we going to New Orleans for a Duke Carolina game in Coach K's last season?
I got my hopes up in 17.
Yeah.
And how close were we? We were extremely close. We were like a Grayson Allen shot falling off of the rim close.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's hard for me because I looked at the games then and I said, it's got to happen. Look at it. Of course it's going to happen.
Mm-hmm.
And then it didn't happen. I look at the games now and you go, should be a foregone conclusion, right? Like I said, since 91, they have not been in the Final Four in the same year. But I don't know. All bets are off, right? Like, I don't know. I honestly don't know. I just know something always happens to ruin it when everybody gets excited about it. It's like it runs
and
away.
everybody's
like a cockroach when you turn the light
I don't even know. I don't know if
away.
excitement's the right word. It's almost like it's a mixture of excitement and dread. It's like, oh my goodness, this could happen, and then you realize what it means.
It's exciting. Yeah, it's exciting for the people that aren't in it.
Yeah.
You know, but I mean, I think it's more about the fans than it is about the players and coaches. Like, they'd love to see each other again.
Well, yeah, we actually, Gilio and I talked to Roy Williams on Wednesday on the show, and he said straight up, like, he doesn't care about that kind of stuff. Like, he just wants to win. It doesn't matter who's across the court. It's like, look, man, that's the next game I'm trying to win to get to a championship. It doesn't matter who it is. And I believe him when he says that.
Right.
But yeah,
he was talking about, like, if you're good enough to beat him once, you can beat him again. Like,
pretty much.
They always say, like, it's hard to beat teams more than once. Like, yeah, but that's because they're good teams, not because you've done it once already. Like,
yeah. All right, well, that's going to wrap it up for this edition of the ACC Panic Room. I guess we got some more Panic Rooms to go with Duke and Arkansas and Carolina St. Peter's on Sunday. We will see you then.